Hi, I'm Andrea Lynn, and on April 15th, Notre Dame was on fire. And then Ben Shapiro tweeted about it, and the Washington Post published a piece calling him a far-right pundit. That's not what I'm going to talk about. At least, I'm not going to talk about the Washington Post article. I did take issue slightly with Ben's tweet, though, and it caused me to reflect on my own ideas of Western civilization and how it has come to be. Let's have a look at the tweet that Ben wrote. If we wish to uphold the beauty and profundity of the Notre Dame Cathedral, that means we refamiliarize ourselves with the philosophy and religious principles that built it. That was one of them. The other one says, and that is why it is a central monument to Western civilization, which was built on the Judaeo Christian heritage. I think these tweets are genuinely trying to just convey what Ben is thinking in the midst of this tragedy, but it just didn't sit well with me. In the midst of this beautiful piece of history in flames, it seems like Ben was taking this opportunity to propagate his idea of faith-based values. I suppose it's not that he can't do that or shouldn't do that. I just thought it was a bit soon. I thought we should have given a little bit more time. Regardless, the next day I saw a few other people critiquing pretty much the same thing. I was like, can we give it a little bit of time, please? And one of those critiques was by Dr. James Lindsay, and I chatted with him a little bit about why he had a problem with what Ben was saying. We ended up on Dr. Lindsay saying he's continuing the very trendy line of attempting to revise messy history into a simple, my religious worldview made the West great, which is really almost the same thing as colonialism made the West terrible from his enemies. So it's specifically the Judaeo Christian heritage that seems to, I guess, color our history, putting his own rhetoric on historical events and saying this is why. And I think that's what Dr. Lindsay is taking issue with. We did chat a little bit more back and forth, and he asked me, because my specialty is Christian history, that's what I studied in school, and he asked me if I knew the origins of the term Judeo-Christian, and I actually didn't. I've taken numerous Christian history classes, and I never heard that term in any of the classes. I grew up in a conservative Christian home, and I heard the term from family and from pastors, but never in my history classes. So Dr. Lindsay ended up forwarding me an article explaining the origins of the phrase. Now, it turns out it really became prominent in the 30s when anti-Semitism was catching on in the States, and Christians and Jews wanted to sort of have an alliance. And so it started off meaning well, but it is something that is a modern concept and wasn't really around, well, before. But it's not as simple as Judeo-Christian values are why the West is great or why the Enlightenment happened. It's more complicated than that. We can't just attribute all of Western success to the Judeo-Christian framework, but we can't take away the cultural context of the time. Christendom was the established religion of Western Europe for many, many years. So many of the philosophers and scientists who were part of the Enlightenment grew up in this historical context, the context of a Christian culture. Now, if we switch gears and say, look at nationality, for example, of René Descartes, he was French. David Hume, he was a Scotsman. these individuals grew up in a particular place, which influenced their thinking. They also grew up in a particular time. They grew up with Christianity being the religion of the day. So all these things had an impact on how they saw the world. So we can't tease out which aspect of these individuals' lives caused them to come up with their discoveries. I mean, even though David Hume was, I guess we would call him an empiricist. Atheist is maybe going too far, but so even with David Hume being an empiricist, or I guess secularist, he was still reacting to Christianity. He needed that thing to make him go in the other direction to push against. So we are seeing this push and pull between religion and secularization in this time. And there's a tension between the two. And this is all from looking at the historical context, looking at the facts of history. So to go back to this idea of the tension between the faith and reason of this time, because it is the Enlightenment that always seems to be brought up between the sort of, I guess, secularist, new atheist sort of point of view, where it says, no, it was only through secularization that the Enlightenment happened. And then there's the religious perspective of, no, it's only because of faith or these Judaeo Christian principles that the Enlightenment happened. So we can't just look at one and not the other. It's this tension that we see between these two things. I spoke with a political philosophy professor, friend of mine, and he characterized it in Athens and Jerusalem, this sort of tension. And I would even go in so far to say that it's this tension that has brought us to the place that we are today. I mean, we're still seeing the tension now, and it's all because of both sides. So it's the tension that may be more important than either one by itself or on its own. Even though I disagreed where Ben was going with his tweet, I do appreciate it because it made me stop and think on what I studied in school and I guess what the relationship is with this thesis of Ben's and with, on the other side, those who are atheists, their perspective. It's an interesting tension that I find rather fascinating. So I think I'm going to make another video in my journey along these lines, and I have no idea what more I'll come up with, but I'd like to hear your thoughts on what you think about, I guess, reason versus faith, or Athens versus Jerusalem, these kind of ideas. So thanks for listening. This was a fun video to make because I love talking about this stuff. Don't forget to subscribe, and thanks for listening, guys. So I've been told that I'm not making enough eye contact with the camera. So hopefully I will remember to do this, or hopefully I remembered to do this, depending on if I put this little clip at the beginning or at the end.